Alyssa, did you want to start?
Sure. My name's Alyssa Tawby. I've been with Oakland County Water Resources Commissioner's Office for about 8 years now. Been helping out with dirt doctors maybe for about 6. And I actually do not, my background, my degree is not in like an environmental science subject, but I've been able to learn from the people here enough to get through the presentation and to answer some questions, and really enjoy doing it. It's a bummer we haven't been able to do it this year, but creating the video was really fun. And hopefully it's really helpful and can be used for a long time. So.
Debbie.
Hi, my name is Debbie Saddam. I've actually been with the Water Resources Commissioner's Office now for about 15 years and doing dirt doctors, probably 12 of that. My degree actually is in chemistry. I started working in the laboratory at the wastewater treatment plant. And now I work on the quality and the safety programs for our office. And along with, in a normal year, lots of dirt doctor presentations.
Speaking of interruptions, my cats are not biting. So anyway, JC, if you want to reintroduce yourself.
Yep, I'm JC Garrison, environmental planner with the Oakland County Water Resources Office. And overall, I help coordinate the Dirt Doctors program, getting them scheduled for school visits and water festivals and whatnot. And occasionally I'll present as a dirt doctor, but we have Alyssa and Debbie and another staff member, Gary, who kind of are key dirt doctors. So I'm just here for support and answer any questions that they may need help with. So, yeah.
Perfect. All right. So I guess we'll go ahead and we'll jump into questions. So one of the questions is, what is your favorite thing about dirt doctors?
I guess I'll go first and just say I love that we bring up an assistant doctor. So they always really seem to enjoy putting on the lab coat and helping out behind the scenes. And then, at the end we get to do the quiz, and I think they really feel like they kind of have the...
Here we go. Natalie was able to join us. Natalie, this is the dirt doctor's presentation. Right. So we started off with the question, what is their favorite thing about dirt doctors? So you want to go ahead and continue?
Yeah, I was just saying that when we're able to do the presentation in person, we have a student or two come up and join us as an assistant doctor, and that's probably my favorite part.
So, Debbie, did you want to say what yours was?
Yeah, I think I would agree with Alyssa. Having the one of the students up as an assistant is a lot of fun. And also, like you said, normally when we're outside, we've got a great surprise for the kids at the end. And we do have some squirt guns, and we do some controlled soil erosion, which is always a favorite part of the presentation.
Wonderful. All right, Natalie, did your students have some questions?
Okay. What questions do you have for the
They're all hiding from the camera.
Okay, I have some more questions. I'll start off with those, and maybe it'll spur on some questions from them later. So, what are the biggest causes of erosion in our watershed or area?
My understanding, JC, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's exactly what we talk about in the presentation. I think it's, water, and when there's no vegetation to kind of hold the soil together. So whether that's from a construction project or a natural disaster or whatever, it's going to rain and there's no roots to hold it all together. That's probably the biggest problem. Some other causes I know we talk about a little bit in the presentation are wind and ice, but I don't think those are as big of a problem.
Okay. You mentioned roots, so I guess I'm curious about what are some types of plants that best help reduce erosion. So I know you mentioned grass. in your presentation as a solution because it helps with the root systems, but are there other alternatives that might be better to help with reducing erosion?
I don't know if sorry, go ahead, Debbie.
No, I was just going to say it's the roots that do the work. So it's any kind of plant, honestly, if it's an area with a lot of trees, if it's grass. Grass is typically what we put down after you're done with the construction site. They're going to plant grass to get something up and quickly growing. But it's the roots that do the work. So native plants of all types will do the job.
All right.
You have a question, Preston? No. Okay, Grady.
What is the biggest cause of water to come down on the ground? Like the dirt coming into the grass and dirt? Is it humans? Is it cloud, rain?
You have to talk really, really loud.
I think I heard him. What's the biggest cause of water erosion on the soil? Like, is it humans or rain? Is that right?
Yeah.
I think it's just rain.
Okay, Preston.
What's like the best thing to like keep from erosion?
That's a good question. Okay. Did you hear him?
Mm-mm.
What's the best plant to keep the soil from eroding?
Debbie, do you want to take that one? I feel like it's kind of what you were just saying about the grass being quick.
Yeah, the grass we put down after construction site, we'll put grass seed down and some mulch blankets to hold it in place temporarily. The grass pops up fairly quickly and does a good job at blanketing the soil. But any type of plants, if you get a good root system, will stop the erosion.
If you don't mind me expanding on that answer just a little bit. So you mentioned native plants. If I've actually been to some really cool refuges that they'll show you a diagram of some native grasses that sometimes can range from 3 to 4 feet tall or 6 to 8 feet tall. But what's really cool is their root systems will actually go just as deep into the ground. And so if you were to find those native grasses, their root systems will go in anywhere from sometimes a few feet to even 8 to 10 feet into the ground. And so that the longer root systems actually help to, one, stabilize the erosion, but also help to keep clean local water bodies.
Ethan. Really loud because you're in the back.
What is a mulch blanket one big piece, or like do you just dump like bags of mulch on the ground?
It's one big piece. It's like a blanket, and it can be made out of all different things. So it's called a mulch blanket, but we have some sample ones we use that are made out of like coconut husk and recycled plastic.
Okay, Michael.
Do trees help reduce flooding?
Yes.
Sure.
Yep.
Okay, Grady.
What is the best man-made prevention from runoff?
Probably our mulch blankets. As far as you mean man-made to prevent the erosion? What we typically use is a mulch blanket. That's the most common, as it's going to take a couple weeks at least to get some grass growing. The mulch blanket you can lay down immediately, and that's what's most commonly used. We also have a silt fence, which instead of laying on, this is more to stop the soil from getting into the river. It looks like a little fence, kind of like a filter with little holes that let the water through but hold the soil back. So that one's actually mounted vertically like a true fence, where the mulch blanket is laid right flat on the ground.
Landslides. That's it. Go ahead and ask them. Now, Preston, ask the video. Go ahead, Preston.
Would there be like landslides from like erosion? They didn't hear you.
Would there be
like landslides from erosion?
Yeah. Yeah, like I know in California when they had those wildfires, there were issues after the fact with mudslides happening because the plants and the roots that were holding all of the soil together were, they had burnt up. So they were having issues with mudslides after those.
Okay, Chloe, nice and loud way in the back.
So if the roots are filled with water and it rains again, would there still be as much sediment as there is without grass there?
Ooh, that's a very good question. So I think we talk about that a little bit in the presentation. That's at that time, like the roots are what we call saturated. So they're full, and that's when the runoff starts to happen. So the roots can only hold, so much water until if it keeps raining or it rains, the next day or whatever, and they're still full, then you'll start to get that runoff water. And that's a little bit something you were talking about, Brittany, with those long, long roots. Those will help, they can hold more water when they're longer.
Do the mulch blankets prevent landslides?
I don't know. I would think that they help. I don't know. What do you think, Debbie?
I would think the same thing. I would think they would help. I would suspect it is just a blanket of, straw or coconut husk or plastic that if you had a major, major monsoon, I would think there could be instances where it failed. But it does do a good job at helping in most cases.
Hey, Andrew.
How many man-made things you can use to prevent weathering and erosion? I didn't hear you.
How many man-made things are there that you can use to prevent weathering and erosion?
Maybe just the two in the presentation that we talk about are what I would say. So the silt or filter fence and the mulch blankets, and then just nature. So planting the grass, having the roots.
Okay, Ethan?
What if a company building a house, they had all the proper, filter fences and everything, but, it was on, a downhill or something and their machinery fell down, then, what would happen there?
For our soil erosion, if we're going to issue a permit for somebody to do some construction on property, we'll give them a soil erosion permit. And they're required to put all these measures in place, the silt fence and different things. And what we do is on a regular basis is we'll go out and inspect it because that happens a lot of times. The cement truck's going to come in and pour cement for the basement and they knock down all the silt fence. And so we actually go out on a regular basis and make sure that all that is being maintained and kept in order. If you got a big rainstorm or trucks, anything that destroyed it, they're required to immediately go back out and fix it the way it's supposed to prevent the erosion. Does that answer your question? I think I heard him right.
Grady?
Would a tree or a big piece of vegetation saturate more water than just grass? Absorb.
Yeah, I think a good way to remember it or think of it is just the bigger the root system, the more water it can hold. So, but also think, grass the roots are not deep, but it's usually much wider. It's usually covering a much bigger area. So I think a field full of grass maybe would be better than one big tree, but a big field full of big trees would hold more water.
So another question that I have is, how or can wildlife be affected by erosion? And if so, can you elaborate on some situations that maybe it has been affected by affected wildlife?
I think the biggest one we talk about in our presentation is if all that soil ends up in the river, imagine if you were a fish. So you can't see, they're breathing oxygen out of the water through their gills. And if that water is full of soil or, if the pond fills up, there's no water left for the fish to swim in. So I think the biggest impact is to the wildlife that are actually in the water. Just because there's so much, that soil becomes a pollutant in your lake, river, stream, that it makes it difficult for them to survive.
So another question is, what can I or the students do at home to help reduce erosion? So you've kind of mentioned that a little bit already, but do you want to expand on that?
I'm not sure, what they could do to reduce erosion. I'm assuming, none of them at home are doing like major construction projects, but something they could do to help the quality of the runoff water, which is pretty inevitable. There's sidewalks and roads and buildings everywhere pretty much now. So that runoff water is either going to go eventually right to a lake, river, or stream, or down a storm drain and then end up there. So a few things we try to teach kids to do is pick up after their pets. Like when you walk your dog and he goes to the bathroom, always pick that up. Don't litter. Sometimes that can end up down the storm drain. Either it goes down in the storm drain and gets in the waterway, or it blocks the storm drain and can cause some flooding. What kind of fertilizer, people use on their lawns is really a big one. And and washing your car on the lawn. That's another thing that we talk about a little bit, so that kind of soapy, maybe even with some chemicals in it, runoff water doesn't go into the waterway.
Okay, Emma.
I feel like plant two things like very close to each other. Well, with the root, the other root stuff, like
Did you hear her?
No, I could not hear her.
Okay, if you plant two things very close together, will the roots of one mess up the roots of the other?
I think it depends
I
what
don't
it
know.
is.
Yeah, I don't know that they mess it up, but they're going to compete. They're going to compete for the water. So just like the trees, when the leaves are growing, one tree might outdo the other. They're all reaching for the sun. It's the same thing with the roots. It's just a matter of a competition. Who's going to get the water first, or who's going to get the most water, I would think.
Okay, Tessa?
what can we do to filter the soil from the water?
So like if there's runoff, how can it be filtered or cleaned? Okay.
I'm sorry, what was the question?
She said, what can we do to filter out the water? So when there's runoff, what can we do to help filter the water?
Well, the roots are going to do the natural filtering. The vegetation and the roots do the natural filtering. What we use, the mulch blanket and the filter fence, are mainly what we use for the construction projects to filter the water. So the mulch blanket and the filter fence are both designed to hold the soil and the pollutants back and let the water, the clean water, flow through.
Okay, Grady?
After there's runoff, would you need to do anything after the fact to help rejuvenate the ground?
Okay, so once the top layer of soil's gone, what can we do to repair it?
After the runoff already happens, what would you do to repair it?
So the runoff water, usually if it's not, carrying a ton of soil with it, if it's not causing a bunch of erosion for any of the number of reasons we mentioned, then you don't have to do anything. But if there's a ton of erosion that happens and that runoff carries a lot of soil into a waterway, there are instances where it's blocked, like an inlet or an outlet to a lake, and that's caused flooding. And so big construction equipment has to go in and dig out, the entrance or the exit to a body of water to kind of let the water level get back to what it used to be.
Other questions?
guess another question would be, and JC, you kind of answered this earlier today, but are there some certain careers that you can go into related to soil erosion that maybe the kids could learn about that maybe they hadn't heard about before? That way, as they considered what jobs they want to have in the future, maybe you can elaborate on a few options.
Do you want to take that one, JC?
Is this the same students from this morning, or is this a different class?
This is a different group.
Okay. Yeah, well, I mentioned, so our office employs soil erosion inspectors, and I believe they just have to have a high school diploma. And once you get hired in, you then take a certification course through the state of Michigan. It's called a Certified Construction Stormwater Operator. And it's about, I think it's like $100 to get that certification, and it's good for 5 years. And, you know, they basically cover all the important concepts of soil erosion prevention and what sort of things you would look out for when you're inspecting construction sites. And yeah, so it's definitely, soil erosion inspectors will always be needed. You might be employed by a county or maybe your municipality. Construction companies need them as well. So, you know, we'll always have stormwater runoff, we'll always have construction. So definitely it's a field that will always be there. So it'll be something to consider for sure.
And just to add, for the college path, we do employ environmental planner types and civil engineers. So civil engineers deal with water, sewer, stormwater. So they're doing more of the design phase, the regulations, the standards. And the environmental planners obviously do more of the planning, the day-to-day operations. There's emergency response people that do that handle spills and contamination. So there's some entry-level high school diploma all the way up through, you know, college degrees, depending on what you're interested in.
Do the students have any further questions?
Okay, Lily?
What would happen if there's too much trash in the drains?
Okay, what happens if there's too much trash in the drains?
A few different things. So it could, if it blocks the drain, it could cause flooding. If it goes down into the drain, it could eventually end up in a lake, river, or stream. And then we do have something at our office called a Vector truck. That is a huge, huge truck with a big suction hose on the end that will go down into the drains and clean them out. And so sometimes the garbage will get sucked out with that. But because they're so big and expensive, the cleaning schedule for most communities and their drains is every few years. So the best thing to do is to just try not to let any garbage end up in there in the first place.
All right, well, we probably have enough time for maybe one more question. So if anyone else has another question.
I have a question for the kids. Can I ask them a question?
Absolutely.
Had you guys ever thought about or known anything about soil erosion before this presentation?
No.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, we studied erosion a little bit in science earlier this year.
Awesome. Very cool.
All right, well, students, if you could go ahead and say thank you to the presenters, Alyssa, Debbie, and JC.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
Thanks for having us,
You're
guys.
welcome.
All right.
Yes,
So our-
thank you.